Everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's TI Technology webinar hosted by Texas Instruments. Tonight we're going to look at using graphing calculators in your financial literacy program, so good stuff. And let me go to the next slide here. And so tonight I'm your host, Eric Archer. I'm the STEM Market Segment Manager from TI, and I'm filling in tonight. Usually the host is Mike Houston, but he's going to be one of the presenters tonight. So they called in the second string here, so I'm going to do my best. But joining us tonight, we have Catherine Dawson. Catherine is the math curriculum designer for Next Gen Personal Finance and NGPF for short, and they're leading the way in financial literacy education across the country. She'll tell you a lot about that. She's out of Seattle, Washington. So Catherine, welcome.
Thanks so much. Excited to be here.
And like I mentioned earlier, Mike Houston's a presenter tonight. Usually he's your Tuesday night webinar host for Texas Instruments. And Mike is a T-Cube national instructor, been with T-Cube for a long time. He's a math teacher out of Newcastle, Pennsylvania. So Mike, thanks for joining tonight.
I'm happy to be here. And Eric, maybe you'll do such a good job that you'll take over my Tuesday night hosting abilities.
There's no way that's happening. Yeah, you're too smooth. I'm going to do what I can to not mess this up. So thank you both for being here. Really excited about this session. The financial literacy is really, really important, and I'm looking forward to seeing what y'all talk about tonight. So,
All right.
Catherine, can you go over the agenda with us tonight?
Yeah, definitely. So we just got our welcome and introductions. Very excited to be here with you all tonight. Get to talk a little bit about financial education and Texas Instruments calculators. We are going to, after these welcome and intros, talk a little bit about Next Gen Personal Finance, and then go through a few different classroom activities that you can pull into your classroom that support both math and financial education, financial literacy, and then make sure to stick around until the end because there's going to be a webinar drawing.
Sounds good. All right. And then Mike, can you talk about the expected outcomes tonight?
Yeah, for sure. So the really big thing about tonight is we're really excited to share some resources with you. And we hope that by the end, you know where to go find some of those really important resources that are going to help support your math and financial curriculums that you have, and that you'll be a little more comfortable using those resources and activities with either the TI-D4 or the TI-Nspire platforms.
Awesome. All right, and for those of you in the webinar, just to go over a couple of things. So WebEx chat and poll features. So the chat window can be used to send general messages, and there's some people telling us where they're from, and there's some conversations already happening in the chat, so feel free to use that. To open the chat window, there's an icon at the bottom. You'll see it's a little chat icon. And that'll enable that. You can send a chat to everyone, which everybody will see, or if you want to send it to a particular person, you can go into the little drop-down box where it says to, and then pick the person you want to send a direct message to. If you want to send a question to the presenters, there's a Q&A window that you can open up and ask a question. And then later, we're going to use the poll feature, which is also found on the lower right side of your screen. I think Mike might have to help me out with that one, but I think they're going to use that tonight for some questions. All right. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Catherine.
All right, thanks so much, Eric. So as mentioned in the beginning, my name is Catherine. I'm a curriculum designer at NGPF, and we are a nonprofit that's focused on financial education. And so I'm just going to take a few minutes to kind of set the stage for why we care about financial education and how we can blend finance and math. And so to start off, I'm just going to kind of share our mission. So our mission is that by the year 2030, all students will take a one-semester personal finance course before they graduate from high school. And so kind of as to why we care about financial education, right? You've probably heard people in your lives, maybe you say, I wish we had learned like real life skills in high school, right? Commonly things like how to do my taxes, right? Or like knowing about student loans before I ended up with a lot of student debt and didn't quite know what that would look like for my financial future. And so our goal is that every single student gets access to financial education so they're able to graduate with those real world skills. And I know that Mike also is passionate about financial education, so feel free to jump in if you want to kind of share anything about that.
Yeah, so I'll make this quick. I'm a longtime math teacher. I'm just starting my 20th year. Today was actually my first day of in-service. And for many of those 20 years, I didn't do a lot of financial teaching. I was very focused on the math. And to me, that was like someone else's job. And, it really became kind of my own personal problem. And I'm not going to get into it, but I made some really bad financial decisions. And so I'm like, what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else? And I also don't want to add to my plate. And so that's what we're going to kind of get into a little bit tonight of, how do I teach math and also teach financial concepts at the same time?
Awesome, thanks so much. So I've got one question for everyone in the webinar, which is to take a guess in the chat. How many states do you think currently guarantee that every single student takes a personal finance course? So drop your guess in the chat. How many states require a 1-semester personal finance course? We got a lot of guesses ranging from 0, highest I've seen is 30, 10, 35, none. Wow, pretty big range of guesses. All right, I'll reveal the answer. The answer is 23. So a lot of you seem to know right off the bat. But 23 states currently require that every high school student takes at least 1 semester of personal finance. And that includes 8 that have already have that requirement, and then 15 that have recently passed a law. So you can also kind of see in that number that there's a lot of momentum in recent years to move towards more financial education. And so that means that it might be something that's relevant to you in your classroom. You might see personal finance show up at your school. You might be teaching a section of it. So it's definitely something that we've seen growing in the last few years as well. And we do, at NGPF, we've got a kind of up-to-date dashboard on the state of financial education and annual report. So I will drop a link in the chat if you're curious to learn more. You can check it out. And then next up, I'm going to just kind of give you an overview of the materials we have in case you are interested in bringing personal finance into your classroom. There's a pretty broad range, so you'll likely be able to find something depending on what you teach. Everything we have totally free. Our big flagship course is called the semester course. It's a semester long, as you might guess from the name, covers all the fundamentals of personal finance that students should know before graduating. We also do have a trimester and full year course, depending on what you're looking for. And then I'll focus more today on the financial algebra course, which you can see on the side. We've developed that more recently in the last few years, and I'll focus on it since we're kind of more likely to be math teachers here and more interested in the overlap of sort of TI technology and personal finance. Also, I will drop a link in case you are curious to compare those courses. And so to kind of get into the financial algebra course a little bit so you just know what it includes if you want to check it out more, we built it so that it covers core like Algebra 1 concepts, and it blends personal finance and math. So our goal was to kind of have a high school course that covered both sort of like the basic high school math skills and fundamental personal finance. If you teach in a math classroom, you've probably encountered students before who are disengaged from math by the time they get to high school, right? They might not feel like they're a math person. They might not see how math is relevant to them. They've already got years and years of experience in other math classes. And so it's really important, at least I think, to blend real world skills and relevance into math to help them see like, oh, I know when I'll use this, right? It's not just that I'm solving an equation, but I can see how this will apply to my life, how this will be immediately useful. And that can be a really powerful tool for engagement. And kind of along with that, we also know that math can be a barrier to graduation, right? Algebra 1, one of the most failed classes, and most students are required to take 3 or 4 years of math to graduate. And so one goal of this course was to have an alternative math credit that reinforces basic algebra skills without having students have to sit in Algebra 1 and repeat the exact same class. So it's a way for them to get another math credit towards graduation that's still really about fundamental algebra skills, but isn't the exact same. Yeah, I got a good question in the chat. Is Algebra 1 a prerequisite? We generally say yes. So it does teach a lot of the math skills and you'll see which ones they are in a minute. However, it's intended to be more of like a repeat for students who have already had exposure to Algebra 1. So there is explicit instruction. So you could potentially do it without having an Algebra 1 class, but I'd really recommend that students have already gone through Algebra 1. Great question. So I will give you a quick overview of the topics that are covered in the course, and that way you can see kind of what topics are covered, what might fit with your class, what skills you might want students to come in with. So you can see from this preview, and I will also drop the link if you want to look it on your own, although you don't need to open it. You can see from this preview, there are 10 total units. Each unit combines one topic, one personal finance topic, and one math concept. So for example, taxes and fundamentals of algebra, which is kind of pre-algebra skills like percents, writing a function, decimals, things like that, or up to like budgeting and systems of inequalities. So you can see they kind of pair one math, one personal finance skill. Let's take a minute to, oh, someone's having issues seeing the slide. You should be seeing the slide. Maybe Mike can jump in the chat if he's got any suggestions. So take a second to skim through those 10 units. And if you want, drop in the chat which unit you'd be the most interested in either exploring or in teaching for your class. The slide should still be up. I will also drop the document link if it's blurry and you want to take a look. Someone says they're interested in budgeting, starting with taxes, intro investing. Yeah, there's a good amount of investing content. It can be a pretty popular one with students. Saving. 7 or 8 types of credit, managing credit, yep. And then the kind of last thing I'll say for this slide is, as you're looking at those math topics, maybe kind of your math teacher brain is kicking in, and you can see there's a lot of different opportunities to use technology, like TI graphing calculators, for both the personal finance content and the math skills. So Mike is going to give us some suggestions in a minute, but kind of you can see there's some opportunities for things like comparing different representations of a function, or making an amortization or a budget spreadsheet, summarizing data in a box and whisker plot. So there's a lot of ways you could leverage technology to help students deepen their understanding for both the math and the personal finance throughout. Awesome, thank you so much for the chat suggestions. And then, so you have a sense of what the course looks like. It's split into 2 different types of lessons. There's personal finance and math lessons. But that said, it's kind of intentionally blended between the 2 topics. So you can see that personal finance lesson does include a math connection, so there's some math in there. And that math lesson includes an application. So that means that you're doing the math within sort of an applied real world context. So there are 2 different types of lessons, but you could kind of do both in a math class. They're pretty blended. All right, and the last thing I'm going to do is show you just how you would find these resources. And so here is how you could get to the financial algebra course if you're interested in teaching that. And I will really quickly share my screen to show you what that looks like. Awesome, so you should be seeing my screen, and you can see I'm on the NGPF page looking at the financial algebra course. And I'm going to scroll down. You can see all the different units on the left-hand side. So you can kind of click into different units if you'd like, and they just auto load. And then in the middle, you can see each lesson. If you want to see what's in that lesson, you can just kind of click View Student Activity Packet. You'll see I have a link that says View Lesson Guide and Application Key. You might not have it on your end yet. You'll need a free teacher account in order to see that. We want to keep our answer keys hidden from students. But they're free. You can sign up for one, and we verify that you are a teacher before giving you all the answer keys. And then on the right hand, you can see standalone activities. So if you're not doing the whole class and you just want an individual activity, these are all ones you can kind of complete on your own. And to that point, I will show you that we can click over to the activities page. And these are everything here is a standalone activity, usually under 30 minutes. Organized by math topic. You can also filter by finance or by standards, Common Core standards. And so, for example, one of the activities I think Mike is going to walk us through, you can find under linear equations. And we've got, I think we're doing graphing wages in linear equations. And so you could click on that and see what it's about, open up that Google Doc, and it's all right there. So there's a lot of different activities you can pull from depending on what you're teaching in your classroom. So we know math teachers do things differently. You might have a curriculum you already know and love, and you're just looking to kind of plug in one thing. This would be the way to go about that. and will also lend itself pretty well to integrating technology into that. I'm going to skip through that. Oops, I want to head a little too far. All right, Mike, I'm going to kick it over to you if you want to kind of give us some suggestions on what activities you might use, how you use technology, what pedagogical strategies you'd use.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. So I said in the chat, these are my personal favorite because I'm personally not ready yet to like try and implement the financial algebra course into our curriculum. We currently don't have like a great spot for it yet, unfortunately, but we're hopefully working towards it. But I do feel like I can at least take some of the content that I'm already teaching and drill down to some of those particular math content areas and say, oh, okay. For instance, tonight we're going to focus on linear equations and exponential functions. So, how did I teach exponential functions last year? How well did it work? How many financial concepts overall did I hit last year? Is that something that I think I can improve this year? And so those are some of the things that are kind of running through my head as, again, I'm about to get my students showing up on Tuesday. So that my hope is that I can use sort of the individual math activities this year. And I'm not personally saying that I'm going to be running through every single day that I'm teaching math. I'm going to run to something financial. But I'm going to try and do more than I did last year. I always have something that I call the 10% rule. So I'm not changing, a gigantic 100% change of everything I did last year. I'm going to change a little bit and try to improve it for this year. So I'm going to take some lessons I think would really lend itself well to using technology and to also teaching financial concepts alongside of math concepts. And so those are some of the ones that we picked out for tonight. So Catherine, are we ready to go? All right.
Definitely.
All right, so the first activity that we're going to take a look at is graphing wages and linear equations. And I think Catherine just showed a brief snapshot of this a few seconds ago on NGPF's website. And so all I did is I just opened this up as a PDF. And so just kind of like looking through, it looks like that there's this level 1 thing, which I think is kind of cool because I can sort of scroll down a little bit. There's some good stuff. And then all of a sudden I see level 2. And then I can scroll even a little more and then get to, I think, level 3. There we go, level 3. So it's really neat that this activity is really scaffolded really, really well. And I was kind of thinking about my own Algebra 1 students and at what level do I think that I'd probably be using this activity. And I think for now, I'm still probably going to be at least at the level 1 since I haven't used this with them yet, but I'm going to use it this year and see how it goes. And maybe they'll surprise me and they hit a level 1 home run and they let me know that, hey, we can do some level 2 stuff. So we'll see kind of how things go for us this year. But this starts off with printing off a copy of the wage cards. And I'll just click into this real quick so you can see it. But they have these pre-created wage cards, which I think is kind of neat for these 3 different possible team members. And instead of using these preset for tonight, I actually want to kind of use everyone that's with us. And in the chat, if you could give me just whatever you think a appropriate team high school students wages might be, whatever their current wages might be that you think is appropriate per hour. If you could put that in the chat, and I'm going to have Catherine help me out. I'm going to sort of take some notes over here and write these down for team member 1.
Ooh, I gotta see a lot of ones coming in. I see 17, 20, 10, 15, 18, 13. Ooh, someone's very specific, 13, 20, or 15, 17.50. I see $13 an hour, 16, 15. A lot of people coalescing, I feel like 15 to 17.50 seems
Okay.
like a common range.
What's the lowest one that you see? Just
I see a 10. Is that the lowest one I see?
okay. So
Yeah.
let's do this.
Oh, someone just gave us 9. Someone went lower.
Someone had to do it, right? So that's okay. I can run with 9.
Even more, 750. Someone's going minimum wage.
Well, it's funny. So before we add a piece of that. So I was thinking about minimum wage and looking through this activity today, and got to this one question. Uh, uh, the minimum wage, is based off of the state, and that there's a federal minimum wage, right? The federal government sets a minimum wage that no state can go below a certain amount, and that is 725. And I'm like, okay. So I thought about where I'm in Pennsylvania and what our current minimum wage is here. And I thought 725, I know there's been like lots of talk about raising that minimum wage. And I thought, I wonder when the last time the federal minimum wage was changed. So go ahead and use the chat. What year do you think was the last time the federal minimum wage was updated? And no cheating. I had to cheat. You can't cheat. All right, Catherine, do you see anything, any suggestions coming in yet?
Oh, there's a whole big range. Sorry, I wasn't reading them. 1996, 2014, 2020. A lot of people since 2000, a lot of recent, 2 years ago, 1980. My question would be if you count inflation adjustment. I guess there isn't an inflation adjustment. 2001, 1965. I've also got a shameless NGPF plug here. If you want to learn more about the minimum wage, we've got a whole on-demand hour-long like self-guided course about minimum wage.
That's awesome. And where would that be found under the individual math activities?
This is for teachers, not for students, but I just dropped it in the chat in case you're curious. It kind of goes into like, what do you think about increasing it? When was the last time it was changed?
Yeah, so
What's a living wage?
of 2009. And so then my crazy math brain started thinking like, okay, and I didn't get past this crazy point, but thinking like, okay, what was happening in 2009 that they raised the federal minimum wage? So it's just this like rabbit hole that my brain kept on going down that I think there's a chance that your students would also go down the same path as you continue to ask them really great questions. And that's one of the things that I actually love about these NGPF activities. Like I think some of these questions are really, really great. Different than what I would normally see in my textbook, or even different than some of the questions that I would typically think to ask. So I want to get into some math before we get too far into this, into the night. And so I wrote down 3 different team members' wages. Team member 1, we're gonna have them making $17 an hour. So Y equals 17x. Team member 2 is going to be $13 an hour, and team member 3, the poor guy, is only making $9 an hour. So, but I want to give team members 2 and 3 a signing bonus. So let's give team member 2 a smaller signing bonus than team member 3. So I even just driving around, I think I was looking at a company like Panda Express the other day, was offering, I forget what the minimum wage was, but it was something like $12 or $13 an hour and a signing bonus. So what do you think team member 2 making $13 an hour, what should their signing bonus be in dollars? And so Catherine, just give me the first one you see.
Oh, $100.
100, perfect. All right, and then I need team member 3 signing bonus to be a little bit more, or I'd like it to be a little bit more because they're only making $9 an hour. So I saw Mike with 250, so we're going to go with that. So my 3 equations that I would hope my students could get to the point where they could write down would be Y equals 17x, Y equals 13x plus 100, and Y equals 9x plus 250. So the math guy in me, I automatically like want to start just grabbing my calculator and typing stuff in. So I'm using TI Smart View. So for those of you that don't know TI Smart View, it's the emulator for the TI-84 family. So it's a really great product if you're using the 84. And so what do we have here? I think 100 was team member 2. And then poor team member 3, but he gets a nice signing bonus of 250. Okay, so if I go to graph, so this isn't super exciting or pleasing to the eye. So this is where I normally would then ask my students to go to window. And I did the right next to window is Zoom. And I was a huge fan of Zoom for a long time. So if we were to go to, for instance, I don't know, zoom out so we could see more of this graph. So some students automatically use those Zoom, or I saw Mike said, hey, let's go to quadrant 1. Okay, so quadrant 1, you put me on the spot here. I forget where quadrant 1 is. So that is that guy, letter A. And so I would argue that doesn't necessarily give us everything we want either. So I've worked really hard at just getting away from Zoom because to me, it's almost like throwing a dart and hoping that we get something that we want, because the calculator doesn't necessarily know what we're looking for. It just says, hey, here's quadrant 1, or here's our standard window, or here's whatever. And I think it's really great in certain individual instances, but overall, it doesn't get my students thinking about things like domain, range, independent, dependent, and just the scope of the problem. So it drives them nuts at the beginning, but at the end of the year, they know it's coming anyway. So anytime we go to graph, I ask them to think about what the actual window should be. So, okay, for us right now, the X values, those are going to represent probably hours. So we could have 0 hours. We could hopefully have more than 13.2. I don't know. I'm going to go up to say 20, because most of my students probably don't work more than 20 hours. There might be a couple in there. And then I could say the scaling, like keep it at 1, or maybe I want to count by 2s. I don't know. And then the Y values would be the actual wages after they've worked so many hours. So it's possible they can make $0, that they can't really make negative amount of money unless they spend money they don't have. And then Y max. So someone think about what a appropriate Y max might be. So Mike is like super quick tonight. You must have like, you're reading my mind. So Mike said 3,400 is our Y max. And so if we're trying to go from 0 to 3,400, what would be a good scale to use? So Mike threw a little reasoning in why he said 3,400. Danielle said, hey, let's scale by 100. Let's see how that looks. And so my favorite thing about doing the whole window settings thing is sometimes we do a good job and sometimes we don't. So whenever I hit graph, maybe I'm like, yeah, this looks awesome. I love it. Or I'm like, I really want to see something a little different. And so my students can now have an understanding what they should be changing and why they should be changing it to get a better view. So I'm not going to fight with the window right now. Maybe you like that visual, maybe you don't. But what I do want to bring to your attention is above the emulator here, there's this little rectangle with 3 little rectangles to its right. And if you've really never used this piece, so the hide show, the upside to not showing is I get this really huge screen, which is really great sometimes. But whenever I click that side screen, I get 3 other screens, and I can control what each of these are. So do I want to see just something blank? Do I want to see the graph? Do I want to see a table, etc.? So in this case, I think I didn't want the window, I wanted the equation. There we go. So I liked having some of that all in the visual of my student's face, so we can continue to point and talk about what's going on, especially having like the table near the graph, I think is super valuable and important. And so I would probably, me personally, I would switch this. So they're literally right next to each other. That's how important I think the table and the graph are. So if you haven't had a chance to use Smart View and didn't know about the 3 windows on the side, I think it really helps with students with looking at multiple representations. So let's get back to the activity for a second, because I feel like we've gotten too far away from it. I would love to hear my students' responses and your responses too about that second question. So using those equations that we wrote, who do you think got the best compensation deal, and we'll just call them, we'll call them Y1, Y2, and Y3 to keep things easy. So just a reminder where those equations are. So who got the best deal? And then if you could also add in a short synopsis about why do you think they got the best deal? And so I'll give you like 30 seconds to think and type. And while you're thinking and typing, Catherine, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, I don't know, I forget if you had a hand in making this activity or not, but either way, like what were some of the things that you really like about this particular activity?
Yeah, definitely. My colleague Dave, I think, actually made this activity, but I am definitely familiar. I think I really love the applications because they're leveled, so you get to choose that level of difficulty. I also really love getting to like start, especially if it's early in your school year to be covering linear equations, to start with thinking about like how much money could I make is kind of like the more fun side of personal finance, right? You're not worried about budgeting, you're not worried about loans, credit cards, anything. You're just kind of like, how much money could I make? So I do like that as just kind of a quick hook for students. And someone pointed out in the chat something I really like about it is it gets students thinking about who got the best deal is like pretty dependent on the number of hours working. So it also gets them thinking about how personal so many of these decisions are and like really digging into the math in that way too.
Yeah, I know that the signing bonus portion, I think that would be something new that I would probably have to talk to my students about because I don't know how many of them understand how a signing bonus works. That usually it's this
Totally.
one-time thing, not saying that you're going to get like every paycheck or every month. And so that would be certainly a conversation I would have, but I agree. I would hope that they would start to see the the fact that how many hours you're working is really going to start affecting how much money you're gonna take. And I saw a couple people put that in there, and I love seeing that. Any of the comments that surprised you before we sort of keep pushing on here, Catherine?
No, I think all these math teachers clued in real quick to Y3 is a good deal or the team member 3 is a good deal if you're working fewer hours, but that signing bonus won't carry you after you've worked a long time.
Okay, nice. All right, so I'm gonna skip past like some of the questions that I would typically ask. Like I don't know that I would think to ask question 2. But I know that whenever I discuss linear equations, I ask question 3 a lot. I ask question 4 a lot. So those are great questions, but those are ones I would typically think of. So I'm going to skip past that. I'm going to skip past 5 because that's something that we, as math teachers, would typically ask our students to do, and that can be with or without technology, depending on how strong they are. And then get to number 6. So if each team member works 30 hours next week, which member of your team has the best compensation package? And so like I would add to that question that this is their first paycheck, right? Which would include that signing bonus. Without that signing bonus, that's going to potentially change that answer, right? So I like some of these questions. And so like, let's say I wanted to sort of start working through that question. And let me go back to the technology for a second. So 30 hours. So some of my favorite ways to do this, each of these equations, y1, y2, y3, they're all defined and saved. And so if I were to go back to my home screen and quit, there we go. And I just want to recall Y1 because I'm old and I forget what Y1 is. You might not know this, but you have these soft keys at the top. And so once I hit the alpha key, there are these really nice soft keys at the top. And so that one doesn't do anything. But alpha trace gets me my recall for my Y1, Y2, Y3 really quickly. You can find them other places, but I really like that they're all in one place right here. So if I just grab, I need to escape for a sec. Sorry. If I just go back to alpha, trace, and hit Y1 and press enter, it just tells me 340. And it probably tells me 340 because I must have already at some point stored a value for X. So what if I do that one more time? And I go to Y1 and I do Y1 of 30. So then we start talking about function notation, which I think is really important for my students to be able to understand and know. And so I like how clean that is. I like that if my students can start to understand that they automatically start making connections. Math connections, I think, are really, really important. So I could do, you know, y2 and do y2 of 30. And similarly, don't yell at me for not putting the parenthesis in. I know I didn't do it. Y3 of 30, right? So now it's a really clear picture, like, hey, who's going to make the most money that first week if they're working 30 hours, right? It's easy to see it's that third person. The other way that I think is a really important visual way to do this is using the table. So whether you're looking over here or you just go straight to the table and just drill down, I might even be able to type 30. Let's see. I don't know. Nope. So straight to 30. And then again, I get those three values to look at very, very clearly. And I kind of like this table view as well, because you can start to see things changing pretty quickly. Like if I want to start asking, okay, well, obviously the green guy is making buku bucks really fast. Like right off the bat, he's making some cash. But it looks like some of these other guys are making some cash really fast, even faster. So like when would that start to tip the scale? Like that's a great question to start asking. And I think that visual is really easy to see with the table. It can also be really easy to see with the graph. Again, I'm not crazy with how our current graph looks, but we could fix that pretty easily. All right, so what else do I think is a
You
really...
got a question in the chat. Could you type the Y230 and the TI-84 was your question? I think yes, because you're using the simulator, but...
Sorry, so say it one more time. Can I type Y2 of 30?
In the, I guess, wanted to know, like, if I'm assuming the question was if you're using TI-84s with students, would they be able to do this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's not specific to the emulator. That's with their handheld as well. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I think everything that you can do on the emulator, you can do on the handheld. There's a few menu options in the emulator that you don't have with the handheld, but if I'm actually pressing buttons on the emulator, that all is similar to what you would experience on the handheld. So thanks for picking up on that question, Catherine.
Thank you.
Okay, so other good stuff. Like I think question 7, like that would take my students a couple minutes to think about, but I think the scaffolding of how this activity is working wouldn't be that difficult for them to think about. But I really love that question. And it gets students thinking like, okay, so I play a sport and I have this going on in my life. And so I'm not gonna be able to work 30 hours. And maybe they start thinking about, okay, well, I have, you know, as kids, they usually have more than one place they could possibly work. And a lot of those places that they might work now are all gonna have probably some different starting wages. At least back, and again, I'm older than I think a lot of you, but whenever I was in high school trying to find a job, it was very similar that right across the board, just about everywhere I was looking was right around the same starting salary. And I don't know that that's always true anymore. So I really like question 7. I think I would love to see how my students begin to approach question 7, both with and without technology. And I just want to give you a quick peek before we step out of this activity at some of the level 2 stuff. We already kind of started poking at the minimum wage thing. And so I like this has like a little bit of a research-ish component. And I mean, a lot of students might not even realize that minimum wage changes from state to state, right? So at least for me, I am extremely close to the Ohio border. I live in Pennsylvania, but I'm about 6 minutes from Ohio. And so where I teach is also kind of close to the Ohio border. So maybe students think about crossing the border if the minimum wage in Ohio is higher than PA. And I don't actually know the answer to that question, but you know, that's, I think, something interesting that students might not already know. And I love that this is already like, boom, pre-programmed, ready to go. Was the average monthly rent in your state? Like, I just think some of these are some really great thought-provoking questions. And like I do with most of the activities that I found, whether it's on TI's website or NGPF, and I'm sure most of you would probably do this as teachers, you don't necessarily need to go through every question, right? Maybe there's one or two questions that are like, these are going to be, the crux of our lesson today. And I love seeing that. So I want to run to the Nspire for a second to kind of think about how this might look, the average monthly rent in your state. So let me run to the TI-Nspire for a second. And this is something that I kind of built quickly as we were kind of getting ready for tonight. All I did was I just used some sliders. So I create a point and I switched over to the TI-Nspire software. So I'm using TI-Nspire software as opposed to TI-D4. And all I did was I just create a point and I just defined the X value as wages and the Y value as hours. And whenever I did that, it said, hey, you want to create sliders for this? And I'm like, yes, I do. So I created certain values for those sliders to range from how did I do that? Okay, I can do this pretty fast, I think. Let me see. This might totally wreck everything, but maybe it won't. So I just opened up a graph page and then I went to geometry, points and lines, and then I did point by coordinates because I wanted to make sure I had specific coordinates. And so that negative 9.88 is highlighted, and I called that wages, and then 2.76 hours. And so as soon as I pressed enter, it defaults to 1, 1, and it automatically dropped that in there. And so first it's going to say, well, where do you want to put the slider? And I say, okay, I want to put it there. But whenever you actually hover over the number line and right click, which is control menu in TI-Nspire, you get some other options that are really great. Like I went to settings and I said, well, I don't want the minimum hours to be -5. I want it to be 0. I wanted the maximum to be, I think, 20. I wanted the step size to be something specific. So that's how I did that part. And why did I do that? Well, I wanted to go back and actually type in. So if I hit Control G, that gets my function line open. And one of the functions was 17x, I believe. Control G again. And another one was 13x plus 100. And Control G one more time for our third. It was 9x plus 250. So with those three there, I just thought it would be kind of a good visual way to answer the question of, okay, let's say we know we need a certain amount of money that particular month. Let's say that we know whether it's rent or they're trying to, buy something expensive or whatever. Let's say they know that they need, let's say $500. That seems like a nice, pretty number. So I'm just clicking and dragging these sliders. So if they need $500, then I can do the same thing with the hours, and I can slide this over and start to see where it starts intersecting, right, my three different equations. And so I thought that was kind of a easy visual way to sort of play with answering that question. There's obviously lots of other different algebraic ways to do it, but I thought that was kind of a neat visual for students to see. All right, so again, if you want, there's a lot in this activity, especially if you hit level 3. And I really want to get to the exponential stuff too. So I'm going to let this activity go. But I do want to make sure that you know that at the end, Eric is going to give out a link for the documents. So whether you find this activity on NGPF's website, which is free, obviously, or you just click the link at the end of our talk tonight, and in that will be this activity as well. It will already be there. So a couple different places to get it. So let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about depreciation and where it relates to exponential functions. So I picked this because I'm gonna be honest with you. I think we're all friends tonight. And I really think I stink at teaching exponential functions. I think I'm pretty good with like linear, pretty good with quadratic, and I'm just not the best with exponential. And I think it's because I always have trouble finding, again, things that relate to students' real life. And I know, Catherine, I think you and I talked early on about the fact that I don't know how many half-life problems exponentially I've done by literally today whenever I was at school, I grabbed my book, which I don't want to reveal the publisher, but I just started looking through the exponential part, and there's half-life, and there is population growth. I don't see anything in here that's financial. So like I know that I typically will stick to the book because that's where I was most comfortable. And so I'm really glad this is kind of getting out of my comfort zone. So just kind of looking at the start of this particular activity, how what's the purpose? How do they set it up? And the part one, they're like, hey, here's this exponential standard form, and here's what each of these do. And I like that because I've done that before. And if I were to look at again the first page of my exponential functions in my book, it looks very, very similar to this. I like this is specific in context to someone that is trying to buy, I think, a screen printer, and it's going to depreciate over time. But for my students, exponential, I think, is a little tough because this is typically the first time that the x, the independent variable, is now in the exponent spot where they're used to it really being as a base. And so they're like, well, something weird is going on there. And then there's also an A and a B. That's usually new-ish for them. And so I just want to run the Nspire for one more sec because I use sliders a lot. I'm a big fan of using sliders. So if I just start a new document and I go to graphs and it's waiting for something, and if I just type A times B, you have to include the multiplication symbol there, otherwise it will think you're creating a variable AB as opposed to A times B. And so if I just type A times B to the X and press enter, it's going to say, wait a second, I don't know what A is, and I don't know what B is. So do you want to create sliders? I'm going to say, yep, let's do that. And let's move this. And then I'm going to right click on the number line, and I'm going to change my settings. I did this earlier, and I liked seeing A go from 0 to 200. Oh, not what I want to do. Settings. Let's keep that at 1, 0 to 200, and let's make the step size go by 25s. Again, this is the starting salary. And I'm going to change the float to auto. And then I'm going to do the same thing with B, except I'm going to put in some different numbers here. Let's have B go from 0 to 2. And let's make that change by a quarter. So I got that. And then last but not least is I want to change my window. I did that kind of quickly, but I right-clicked in the white space. The right-click on Nspire is like a context menu. It's one of my favorite moves because it just usually gets you typically what you might want to do with that particular application and that particular area. So window settings. Again, I ask my students not to use the Zoom features, even though they're there. I found that, by the way, if I don't even talk about the Zoom features, my students typically don't go there and find stuff on their own. Sometimes they do, but usually not Zoom. And they know they're going to be asked to do a lot of stuff with window settings anyway, so a lot of times they don't ever touch it or bother with it. So I think I'm going to go from -2 to 10, and I don't care what it counts by, and -50 to 200. And let's count by 50s. So I like the whole slider aspect because I can start just changing A, and I do a lot of what do you notice, what do you wonder? And so as I'm moving this back and forth, my students can see that they have just something that is a constant function, right? There's nothing exponential about this at all. And where are these 51 or 76? Like, where are these numbers coming from? Where were they expected to see it in the equation? So we take some time to do that. But I really love seeing then things change really quickly as soon as I start changing B off of 1. And they're like, whoa, that changed a lot, right? Or the other way, right? Do some decay. So that's usually how I'm going to at least be trying to introduce exponential functions this year. So my plan is to start by introducing it by just getting them familiar with what does the A do, what does the B do, and then so that kind of lets me then have some real context for talking about this part one. which I think is going to be really helpful for my Algebra 1 students to get some of that context. Because I think once they sort of see what the A does, what the B does, what the shape of the graph looks like, and then we can start putting some numbers to this. Like I could ask my students, well, what if I swap that 8,000 and the 0.92? Like, will things look the same? Will they look different? Why? We talk about order of operations, right? So the words that I use, which might not be the perfect words to use, but I ask them, what is the base that's connected to the exponent of 10? And I'll have students, some students will say, well, it's the 8,000. Some students say it's the 8,000.92. Some students say it's the 0.92. And we talk about like who's right, who's wrong. And we really work hard. I work hard to sort of think about, I don't use the word syntax to my students, but I want them to think about what's really going on, and that there's multiplication in between that 8,000 and 0.92. All right, I've been doing a lot of talking. I want to pause for 1 second. Catherine, is there any questions that have come up, anything in the chat that we should talk about?
Yeah, some really great suggestions in the chat. I love Becky had a good example problem related to exponential functions, talking about like inflation, which I feel like is also in the news a lot recently. So another good exponential connection and kind of like, I mean, Becky's great example you can read, but was just like back in the day, I could buy a ribeye steak dinner and baked potato, small salad, and drink for $2. Like, let's assume inflation's 4% and see what that would cost now, to kind of get a more innate understanding of both inflation and also growth factor. So that was one that stood out. And Eric had a great joke about new car smell very expensive.
It really is. It's so expensive. I think I forget what the saying is, that a car loses what, half its value, a brand new car loses half its value after you drive it off the lot. And like it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to kind of see it, right? So students can kind of see.
You could build that into your problem. You could be like, it started at 8,000, we're just dropping that intercept to 4,000 right away.
Yep. And I know that a lot of my students may not be getting a brand new car in high school, but I am guilty of getting my first teaching job, and I was so excited to make some real money that I went out and I bought a brand new car. I'm like, I deserve, darn it, a brand new car, and so I went out and bought one. And again, I said earlier that I made some really bad financial mistakes. I'm going to put that one on the list. So yeah. All right, so the sort of the rest of this exponential portion, I just want to kind of scroll a little bit slowly through some of these because I think, again, some of the questions are just really great questions that I would typically want my students to be able to answer, but I don't know that they would normally, if I just did my standard exponential example 1, example 2, example 3, go, that they would be able to maybe answer these questions really well. But I think flip it, if I sort of start my exponential functions with using sliders because I really like them, and then we do some of the part 1 talk, and then get through some of the part 2 practice problems, then I think whenever my students go to some of our standard book problems or our state test problems, I think they'll have actually an easier time with the exponential part compared to how I've normally done it in prior years. So I'm going to show a couple more of these. And the other thing that I found whenever I do a lot of financial stuff with my students is again, I already admitted I've made financial mistakes in my life. I admit that to my students. Like I don't want them thinking that I am this high and mighty, genius whenever it comes to money and how to handle it. I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm trying to help them learn about things that I never had the opportunity to learn about. So, there's a lot of vocabulary here that I think my students would not just be able to run to. Like, I don't know, they would understand what depreciation means or annually. Some of my students even have trouble with percents, right? These are all things that I think are like embedded into this activity. And that's why I said, like, I don't know that I would do every single question in this activity, but I think I could do a couple of them, and it would really help students grasp exponential functions, and then hopefully do some other problems that they need to get to. All right, so I'm going to keep scrolling here, but as I'm doing that, Catherine, anything that you want to touch on or mention with this activity?
Yeah, my last plug for this activity is it's part of our like math collection, so it's titled Math. And this is great if you need a sub plan. So maybe I know the school year's just starting, you might not be planning for subs, but when you do, great thing to reach for. They've got like a little Ed puzzle video that does a walkthrough kind of I do example, and students can work through. So great for direct instruction, but also pretty convenient if you need a sub plan while you're out.
That's a great idea. I might be writing that down. I might be writing that.
Yeah, it's got the Ed puzzle, so it's like there is some instruction there. It's easy to kind of flip classroom or do it while you're not there.
Awesome. Well, as I'm kind of starting to wrap things up with Catherine on our end, the one thing I do want to mention is I know we've been talking about NGPF's website a lot of time, which I'm excited about. I also want to mention on our website just a couple things that I think are also important to note. If you go to our website, education.ti.com, and you go to educators, the one thing I really want to highlight here is right in the middle. Eric worked really hard to get this put in there. Financial literacy resources. So I'm going to click on that for a second and see what we see.
I think we can't see your screen possibly.
Oh, you know what? This is my first time doing a webinar, so I forgot to share my screen. It's such a rookie mistake. All right, let me start over. Education.ti.com, and then educators at the top, and then financial literacy resources. Thanks so much, Catherine. And so there's some lessons that are already here. There's some information about webinars that we've done, including this one. And then there's also some how-tos, and this is probably the part that I'm most excited about right now. If you click on the Explore of the how-tos, the one thing we didn't touch on tonight that would be great to do in another webinar is the finance solver. And both the TI-D4 and the TI-Nspire have really powerful finance solvers. Whenever I went to go buy my truck, I used them as I was negotiating with the salesperson. I didn't need them to run back to their manager for me to figure out how much my monthly payment was going to be. So I was able to sit there with my TI-Nspire and crunch my numbers. And it probably drove them nuts, but I was happy to have it. So if you've never used a finance solver and you want a little quick snippet of what it can do and how to use it, I think this is a great place to go. And the second thing I want to mention from our website, and last thing for tonight, on any of the pages, doesn't matter where you are, you can click on products, and doesn't matter, any page, go to the bottom, there's a contact TI at the very bottom. And if you click on that contact TI, I always like to mention that there's this TI sales support. And if you click on that, it brings you up to your local educational technology consultants, your ETCs, which my version of what they do is they're the in-between between what you need in the classroom as a teacher and what TI can help you get and show. So these are all people that you can reach out to by phone, by email, and where they're located in the United States. And so if you have questions about TI products, how to use them, you want a demonstration for your school, you want some help getting some software. Maybe you are like, hey, I really like that TI-D4 emulator and I don't have one. Reach out to them and see if maybe there's something they can do to help you get it. They're really, really a great resource that are probably not mentioned enough at TI. So with that, I'm going to stop and let Eric finish things up for tonight. Maybe. All right, Eric.
I
can
did
you help
not.
us
I
out?
did the rookie mistake thing. I
Well,
was
then
totally
this is
muted.
good. You
I
made
had
a
a big,
true
big
rookie
long
mistake.
speech there. You guys missed it, so I have to summarize it now. All right, so I highly recommend you guys do what Mike suggested. Look at the go look at that site where the ETCs are listed. Reach out to that ETC, and they should be able to help you out with a SmartView emulator if you're an 84 user, or the TI-Nspire software if you're an Nspire user. So don't forget to do that. Please do that. Also, let's see. So we do have a webinar drawing, and tonight's lucky winner is Estelito Reyes. And so I'll put their name in there, Estelito Reyes. And so, Mike, how do we usually get that prize to them?
So I'm going to reach out to them tonight over email and get some information from them.
Awesome. Fantastic. And then one more thing before everybody hangs up, Liz was asking in the chat, hey, is there going to be a seminar around the finance solver? The answer is yes. And I would recommend on the TI website, if you go to educators and professional development, there's a link for the September 30th free virtual T-Cube conference. And there is a finance, personal finance session where they're going to go over the finance solver and then some stuff. So check that out, and that's free. And so that'll be a good session. Betty and Judy, a couple of T-Cube instructors like Mike, they've been doing this for a while, and anyway, they'll get you squared away on that. Let's see. So to download your certificate of attendance, there's a link right here. And you're also going to receive an email that has the link to the webinar, recorded webinar, the certificate of attendance as well. And that should get you covered. Hey, you're welcome. Estelito is still there. Very good. Mike, I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Again, I'm the second string here, so make sure I didn't forget anything. What else is there to talk about?
Eric, you did great. I appreciated your help tonight. Catherine, it was great to work with you. I'd be happy to do this again sometime. So just want to say a huge thanks not only to Catherine and Eric, but really excited to see everyone on tonight. And I mean, we had people from all across the world, which I think just tells you that this isn't just a problem to Pennsylvania or to the United States. This is an issue for the world. And I love that we're finally really working hard to start addressing it. So thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. I was really excited by seeing everyone on.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm going to drop. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Catherine. Sorry about that.
Oh, I was just saying thank you all. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm going to drop the links to the documents and the certificate link in the chat, hopefully, so everybody can get that. I'm trying really hard here. Let's see, copy link address. So the certificate link is here. And then the documents link is coming shortly. Have a link address. And like I said, if this doesn't work, an email will be coming to y'all shortly with that information. Catherine, I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, no, all I was going to say is thank you. I guess my last plug is if you want to make a free NGPF teacher account, I dropped the link in the chat. And if you write TI, probably you'll get approved faster because we do kind of hand approve to make sure you're teachers. So that's my pro tip.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and good talking to you. And we'll see you next week. I think, Mike, we're doing another webinar on Tuesday night, right?
I believe so. I think we are doing AP Pre-Calc this coming Tuesday.
Oh, very good. That's a brand new course this year from College Board, I believe.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right. Y'all have a good night, and talk to you later.
Thanks so much. Bye.